Morning, everyone. This is Alan Schimmel of DevOps.com. We'll be starting our webinar in just about 30 seconds to a minute. We'll allow late arriving guests on this beautiful day to come on in. We hope it's sunny and nice wherever you are, and it may not be morning, it may be afternoon or even early evening, but we'll be starting in about 30 seconds. Please stand by. Okay. While we're waiting, everyone, just a quick note. We have set aside time at the end of today's webinar for questions. And if you look in your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see what should be sort of blue headings. One of those is called questions. And if you hit the little caret next to the word questions, you'll see that expand to a section where you could actually input your questions, and we try to answer as many questions as possible. If for some reason we can't answer your question during the webinar, we will in writing try to get your response and post it on the page from DevOps.com that goes along with it. Hope that works. And we will be starting here in a moment. Let me just get out of the way. Also, everyone always asks, are the slides going to be available? Yes, the slides and the full recording of this webinar will be available on our website, generally within 24 hours of the webinar itself. So you can look for it there, and we can move on. Okay, I think we should get started now. So we're going to, this session is being recorded, by the way. Good morning or good afternoon. This is Alan Schimmel, Editor-in-Chief of DevOps.com, and thank you for joining us for another in our continuing series of webinars. Today's webinar is graciously sponsored by CA Technologies, and the I'm an old Long Island boy, and it's hard to lose it. Today's webinar is why continuous delivery of software is paramount to your business. We have a fantastic panel headlined by Georg von Sperling, DevOps and Technology Evangelist at CA Technologies, Anbu G. Mupita, VP Q&A Practice of Cognizant Technology Solutions, and last but certainly not least, Ms. Julie Craig, Research Director at Enterprise Management Associates. Folks, welcome to our panel today, and welcome to a DevOps.com webinar.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. That was my cue for a quick sound check. Georg, I assume you hear me, and Anbu, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Alan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georg. Just real quickly, as I said earlier, but if you're a late arriver, there is a question section of your GoToWebinar panel, and we will have set aside time for questions, and we will be taking questions from there at the end of, or towards the end of today's webinar. We also have a chat window. You can use that to chat to panelists, but we will not interrupt in the middle. We're going to take questions at the end. With that being said, today's topic is one that's near and dear to us here at DevOps.com, and that is on the issue of continuous delivery. What is it, and why is it paramount in today's business world and application-centric economy? And to kick things off, we're going to hand things over now to Georg von Sperling of CA. Georg, if you can take it.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Alan, and welcome to this series of webinars, and I appreciate you spending some time with us to talk about this. First thing I wanted to say is continuous delivery is paramount to the business. We live in an economy driven by applications, whatever industry you're in, entertainment, finance, education, manufacturing, retail, or communications, because everything is driven and disrupted by a connected mobile application-driven world. So consumers and partners expect and are far more likely to interact with a brand through an application than a live person. So enterprises have been focused in the past to compete in a single channel or silos of channels. So examples of this can be found at retailers like IKEA, where the in-store experience that we all love and hate was paramount. Or in the banking industry that has spent the last few years to produce superior online experiences. Or in the gaming industry where the push was on the mobile front. But consumers, as a recent research from Zogby Analytics showed, expect seamless, easy-to-use applications that allow them to complete banking transactions, engage in social media, shop, research, and to be entertained. So the digital disruptors are there, the Airbnbs, the Amazons, the number 26, the Uber, the Tesla, Google, just to name a few. And they're claiming market share and loyalty from older and new generations of consumers. They're responding to what consumers want, a dissolved, physical, digital, multi-channel approach that provides the customer with a seamless experience, regardless of the channel. So where does continuous delivery fit in? So the traditional enterprise is painfully aware of this. Innovate or perish should be many a slogan. Innovation is now often how to engage in this application-driven world. The change is truly explosive. Research by Oxford Economics showed that the software-driven enterprise is a critical driver of competitive advantage. If not today, certainly it will be so in the near future. Juxtapose that with some of the topics that enterprise IT battles with today: security, auditability, and stability, in conjunction with the massive accumulation of ambient data that is happening or anticipated as the customer trust is gained. Then there are the customer expectations of a superior, just-in-time, highly customized, frictionless experience. So software companies like CA Technologies and many others have battled this for years and certainly have the experience. Enterprises have to jump onto the bandwagon and truly embrace being a software company because their business depends on it. Research from Vance and Bourne showed that leaders in the application economy show revenue, profit, and new business growth dramatically higher than their laggard counterparts. But delivering innovations in innovative applications faster and more frequently at exceptional quality can be a chaotic and complex process, particularly if your delivery systems and the processes were designed to release infrequently throughout the year, which is why many organizations today are struggling to deliver what business needs, when the business needs it. The traditional software factory or process of transforming an idea into a customer experience is really throttled by a number of bottlenecks in the delivery pipeline. Like different development teams internally or through partners typically work on different interdependent parts of the composite application. So dev teams often sit idly waiting for other components to be completed. Multiple continuous integration builds are cranked out daily and also need to be tested and validated to progress in the pipeline. Bottlenecks form as creating and configuring the necessary environments manually takes a lot of time and effort. As delays and rework increase, difficult decisions are often made. Let's not delay the project any further and force to move forward anyway, right? Quality assurance gets pushed later and later into the cycle. We all know it gets costlier and more disruptive to correct. Then the environments that you require rarely have the right real-world production-like data. So even when the environment is available, testing fails to yield the most accurate results. A lot of testing is executed manually, causing further delays. Even the most automated test executors require a lot of manual work upfront to maintain. Bloor research showed 70% of the testing activities are inherently manual. Then teams and silos of teams with their own favorite tools to perform tasks are involved in the delivery. Development, testing, release management, operations. The only thing constant here is the regular basis on which these tools are changing and new ones are emerging. Aside from their IDE, dev teams have SCM tools like Git or TFS, CI tools like Jenkins or TeamCity, binary management systems like Nexus or Artifactory. Advanced teams are containerizing with the likes of Docker to assemble, package, and hand off. A variety of testing tools to manage test data and cases or to automate some aspects of testing are employed by these testing teams. Operations or release management teams use continuous configuration tools like Puppet and Chef, hybrid cloud management tools, and other provisioning tools. Often the manual scripting required to get these tools to work together take more time than they are meant to save. And truly, there is little visibility or continuity managed too frequently in that delightful tool called the spreadsheet. Painful as it may be, when time to market suffers and competitive advantage is not delivered in time, worse yet is when the quality issues are discovered during the customer interaction, as that has the potential to damage a brand. Right? The context switching required as agile teams, which have long moved on to newer functionality, now amplifies. IT organizations are doing the right things. Continuous integration, continuous configuration, adapting from lean manufacturing movement, or from the digital disruptors that are, quote, living and breathing DevOps. Few are addressing the challenge in delivering of innovation holistically. I believe Jim Kin, the author of the DevOps Cookbook and the Phoenix Project, summarized it quite well with the 3 principles underpinning DevOps. All of these, systems thinking, the amplification of feedback loops, and supporting the culture of continual experimentation and learning, really focus on getting the right value of your digital innovation contextually relevant into the hands of the end consumer, putting the innovation and the customer acceptance at the center. Dev and ops interact to make that happen. The juxtaposition and the complexity in the enterprise, delivering the innovation and having the paradigm shift from waterfall to agile, the incessant waiting of environments and data. Vogue research highlighted that an average of 26 of 52 dependencies aren't readily available. The technical debt accrued from single-channel approaches, the pockets of knowledge in the tool that is leveraged.
Interesting.
And did you have a comment?
No, Georg, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think there's been a lot of information put out here, and I'm wondering if Julie or Anbu have any comment on what we've heard here.
Well, you know, I can say that I think Georg is right on track. I mean, a lot of the things he's talking about are things that I've uncovered in my research as well. And I think I have a slide later in the presentation that talks about the fact that, you know, software has now become really the center of the organizational universe, and this just isn't IT, this is business as well. So definitely some interesting things that he's brought up, and, you know, I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, Georg, I would, you know, we hear, first of all, for those on the audience who have not read the Phoenix Project yet, and we talk about the 3 ways, for instance, highly recommend you pick the book up, and it's available now in paperback, and I think it's available in audio as well.
And you can get it on your Kindle.
And Kindle too, yeah. But that being said, understanding the 3 ways, but when we talk about things like feedback loops and technical debt, you know, they're more than just words. And you know, Anbu, I would imagine in your practice and in your world, I mean, these are things that you're bringing home to clients every day.
Absolutely. I think if you really look at that, it's very easier said than done because there are a lot of cultural aspects to be worked on, organization, the way the people work, how they collaborate. There are a lot of those outside of our core IT development, which are a reflection of the organizational cultural elements, that needs to be adjusted so that we can force that collaboration to bring out the systems thinking that George is referring here. And also the learning is also part of it. So there are people aspects that I see the biggest challenge in addition to the procedural and the tools aspects that George referred.
Absolutely. Georg, I didn't mean to take you off track, though. Why don't we let you continue?
No worries. This was a discussion, not necessarily just a presentation. So I appreciate the feedback as well. So, you know, what the statement I was really making is that the 3 ways is really to take the digital innovation contextually relevant into the hands of the customer, right? So if you amplify your feedback loops, you really want to understand what the consumer and the customer or the end user or the partner that you're exposing that innovation to is actually doing with your application. So building that into your system is key, you know, and that's where the organizational, component comes in that Ambo mentioned, as well as what Julie said. So one of the things that I wanted to go is downside. We want to downsize the risk and instill the trust in the organizations and to the customer. The updates that we as consumers are getting onto our smartphones are seamless and non-disruptive. The best reviewed apps that we deal with are updated much more frequently and require little quote-unquote training, right? Who has gotten a guide on the latest Facebook update or the latest Airbnb update? So getting the work in progress reduced so upgrades can turn into standard changes can be visualized by this little CD math. That's what I like to call it. As the number of deploys increase, the probability of downtime decreases along with the severity of it, because it becomes a more focused standard change, if you will. The scale of time to resolution is also drastically shifted. The risk profile is minimized considerably, not to mention the impact to training or other readiness factor for the application innovation delivery. To deliver innovations quickly and painlessly so that an enterprise can flourish in the application economy, continuous delivery is paramount. But the friction in the delivery chain must also be removed. Much like the expectation of the customer that consumes the digital innovation delivered by a brand, meaning frictionless, just-in-time, relevant, and valuable, continuous delivery as an IT practice needs redefining. Let me show you what I'm really referring to here, if you'd like. With service virtualizations, teams can rapidly build and configure new environment instances to keep pace with the agile development cycles. Virtualizing services and APIs removes critical dependencies from the development process to ensure teams have what they need, when they need it, reducing constraints so that teams can work in parallel, dramatically reducing the both work and wait time. This removes the developer deadlock and the environment constraints. And automatically generating test scripts speeds up the testing process, and test data management solutions make it easy to create real-world production-like environments. So testing is more thorough and more accurate, producing much higher quality results. So defects and errors are found and resolved much earlier in the cycle so that there's far less rework downstream. And with the right release automation solution, teams can easily draft and create a comprehensive release plan that incorporates all the tasks performed by third-party tools. And along with test automation, promotion from one environment to the next is automated and orchestrated to streamline the entire process. So simplifying build and configuration of new environment instances means testing can occur early and often, like left shift the entire process. Defects and errors are found sooner in the cycle to significantly reduce rework. Teams have access to test data that they need to create real-world production-like environments that enable more thorough testing and yield more accurate results. So errors and defects are discovered long before an app is deployed to production, so that there's no negative impact to the customer experience or the enterprise brand. So at CA, we're redefining continuous delivery as a platform of technology for a highly automated end-to-end innovation delivery pipeline. The unicorns have got, yep.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ambu.
Yeah, the one point I would add is I think the interesting concept that you just talked about, the wait time. Any verification or any kind of validation is all that wait time. It's not productive. So anything that we can avoid that in the later phase of the life cycle is going to improve the work time that you have referred here. I think that's a real productive time. I think that you have brought out in this slide very well.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, I totally agree. One of the things that I've been concerned about in my research is, continuous delivery definitely has some payoffs, and I'll talk about those in my presentation. But it also generates some issues, one of which is the fact that both dev and ops teams are telling me that they're spending more time supporting production because changes are rolling in so fast that, they often are not tested that well. So anything that you can do to shift that process left is, in the end, I think, going to be a big benefit.
Agreed.
Thank you, Julie. And actually, you know, the unicorns, I call them the digital unicorns, right, out there in the world. They've gotten CD down to a science. If you think about Amazon, it experiments with your interaction with them all the time, and they have the statistics to prove it, right? One of the CA's customers chasing these digital unicorns had the worst rated application in the App Store in 2012, and had measured 150 deployments of dubious quality a month across that delivery cycle. Based in the Netherlands, ING has adopted continuous delivery from CA, offering it as a service to more than 200 Scrum teams, and the platform is now delivering upward of 30,000 deployments monthly in a visible and predictable fashion. And their mobile app is now ranked #1 across all the banks there, right? This is what continuous delivery will do for an organization. Julie, do you have any comments on that?
Well, you know, continuous delivery can definitely have a payoff. I hate to say that it will do. I would say that it can do. I think a lot depends on what the organization has in place in terms of automation, and also, as Anbu mentioned, some of the cultural factors. So I think there's a whole big picture there. Continuous delivery in and of itself, unless you've automated the life cycle to some degree, both on the testing side and on the release automation side, you know, if you're trying to do a lot of those pieces manually, it's going to be hard to see the kind of payoffs you're talking about. I think it definitely depends on getting these processes automated.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You know, I would just also mention, Georg, before we move on to our next speaker, I think too many people with continuous delivery get hung up, though, in the metrics of how fast, how much did I deliver. And it's an important thing to remember, you know, different organizations and different parts of your organization function at different speeds. And sometimes what is fast for a unicorn would be downright reckless for a horse in Gene Kim's world, right? And what's fast for a horse would be, you know, just crazy for a dinosaur. So when we talk about moving to continuous delivery, important for customers and listeners out there, that, you know, the right speed is the right speed for your organization. Not everyone can move as Google does or some of these other unicorns, but continuously improving your continuous delivery, if that's too many continuouses, it should really be your goal here. And
Absolutely.
You know, we don't have to define it by X amount of releases or, you know, how fast, but just my observations.
And that's a great point, Alan. I mean, one of the things of, you know, transforming a organization's culture, because we have to go and consider the heritage of the enterprise that, you know, that and how it moved in the past. And transforming the culture is difficult. But, you know, we have things that are helping us to build that transformation in a proper way, right? Utilizing comms, culture, automation, lean, measurement, and sharing as maybe some of the cornerstones to be able to go and drive cultural change. So using the right measurements, right? How do you influence behavior? Utilizing the right measurements, you know, certainly influences types of behavior. Using the measure and utilizing automation to drive those measurements is probably the smartest way to go. Same if you create a platform of sharing, it changes culture and cultural behavior, right? If I expose things to the teams, they behave differently. Using automation to generate shared components and shareable data is quite important. You know, and as you stated, utilize the continuous, you know, improvement over that entire paradigm is paramount.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I mean, Julie, Anbu, I'm sure you guys see this. Sometimes we get so hung up on what are the tools we should use for continuous delivery. We forget how important that cultural aspect is, and sometimes culture is not about tools, more than sometimes. And and we tend to think all of the different parts of it, but I guess that's going to lead us into Ambu's section of slides, which are dealing with a specific area within the continuous delivery, and that's quality assurance, QA. Ambu, why don't we hand over to you?
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate that. I think the George's last statement of having the right measures and then designing our process to achieve those right measures, that's extremely important. I also agree that not all organizations can be digital unicorns because we have many regulated industries where the number of releases can be as high as what Amazon has achieved here. So, we got to define what is that we are trying to achieve. And in order to achieve that, what are some of the adjustments that we have to make in our lifecycle processes that start all the way from planning to ends all the way in operations. So in every step of the way, what are some of the right adjustments that we have to make? And if you look at that, you will get the right measures and the right processes and the steps and adjustments, and everything will come in. And the organizational, the process, product, people adjustments will follow because objective is well set. So I think that's a great summary that George mentioned, and that kind of lets me get into my topic. I think needless to say, continuous delivery is increasingly becoming important, not only in making production deployment happen faster, more frequently, and on a push of a button, but also more importantly to improve the brand value by providing superior customer experience. So I'm going to focus my discussion in a quality assurance standpoint. What are some of the things that we observe when it comes to continuous delivery? So what I would recommend is George very well explained the various components of the software development lifecycle methodology and how some of the nuances are not helping us and what are some of the changes that we have to make. He explained it very well. My recommendation would be to put that definition through three lenses. Right? The first one is integration. George did touch upon that, the continuous integration. I like one of the words that he used, the parallel work streams. How are we going to integrate the parallel work streams? That's important. When we do that, when we are able to integrate that code from the field continuously, then continuous delivery is possible. Right? Every commit is auto-built, self-tested, so that any errors can be fixed then and there. Only then we can integrate. I use the term self-tested to indicate the high degree of automation in testing, and also use of robotics in the self-learn, self-heal purposes. So that's the first lens. How are we going to integrate? The second one is the delivery. If those parallel streams, technically we call it atomic units. If they are integrated properly, that means you have the ability to ensure that code can be rapidly and safely deployed to production. So every atomic change is deployable. If you achieve that state, then continuous delivery is possible. Every atomic change is deployable. The third one is that deployment. If those parallel streams are integrated and if they are ready anytime to be deployed to production, then we have the ability to put those atomic units into production automatically with a push of a button. So when you have this integration, the delivery and the deployment capabilities, then you have the foundation for the delivery. Continuous delivery is in place. Okay. Well, the theory is sounding so good, but we talked a lot about some of the challenges. To me, when we talk to our customers, there are many challenges that are brought in, and George touched upon many of them. The infrastructural issues in terms of provisioning the adequate development environment, test environment, all that. Configuration management issues. The more importantly, the one thing that we didn't talk about is the nature of those applications. If they are monolithic, if they are tightly coupled, then there is going to be significant challenges in achieving the parallel work streams that George touched upon. Sometimes the test automation may not be at a very high level. If it is manual, then integration is not going to be possible. And one very common, consistent problem that we see across the board is the lack of availability of the personnel. especially folks outside of IT. They're not available. If they're not available to collaborate, to participate in the continuous process, then again, it's going to be a problem. That's why some of the comments we made earlier, the cultural aspects, the organizational cultural aspects of how the dev team, the QA team, the ops team, how they work together in a collaborative environment, that's going to be a significant challenge.
Okay.
Now,
Anbu, if I can, I just want to make sure, are we still on this first slide here, colliding in an age of Agile? Okay.
Yeah, we are in that slide. Now, one thing that I would like to mention before we move out of this slide is, many organizations try to evolve to achieve the state of continuous delivery, right? They cannot dictate their terms because of the nature of their organization, how regulated they are, or the culture of that organization. So they can only evolve. So Agile to evolve to the DevOps is highly possible and recommended. Not all organizations are digital unicorns that we talked about. So not every organization can dictate their terms. They got to make the proper procedural, people, and product adjustments. So, and we also got to be very smart, because we always are going to get this question, what am I going to do with what I already have? The organization has already invested a lot of money in having the tools what they have, and they don't want to buy newer tools to start the continuous delivery process afresh. So we need to have that way of evolving into the continuous delivery process in some organization. And if your industry or if your company is fault tolerant, and if you have the clean slate to start, I think then you're lucky to start a new project or a new piece of work in a continuous delivery model. Otherwise, you got to make these adjustments. You got to think about how I'm going to evolve into the continuous delivery process. So that's what I want to mention in this slide. Now let's move to the next slide, please.
So Anbu, I just wanted to mention there that that safety net of saying that we have regulatory compliance, etc., and not go driving to continuous delivery, it's slowly dissipating, right? I mean, today's consumers and partners that we work with are moving at a breakneck pace. So it is imperative that there is at least a path to get to that point. Of course, you have to start someplace. Of course, you're not. Some organizations aren't culturally yet or organizationally yet prepared to start tomorrow with delivering so many changes into their production environment. But there needs to be a path, and I think that's what you're also going to be speaking to.
I agree. I 100% agree, and organizations got to prepare for it. If they don't, then they're going to miss the train, and then catching up is going to be a lot more costly later in the future because of all the changes that we talked about. Now, I sincerely believe that the core objective for continuous delivery is achieving superior customer experience. In a few minutes, Julie will talk about the trends in the industry and how the industry is reacting to them. To me, digital transformation that every industry is going through is what forces us to adopt the changes in the software development and delivery models. The biggest change that we are going to face is how we are going to implement this continuous delivery. All of us should talk about, because this is a philosophy, this is a journey. By means of this, I believe that the traditional methodologies are going to be digital adapted, and traditional quality assurance processes are going to transform into digital assurance processes. In the past, quality assurance meant certifying something that is functionally correct, and we did not worry about cosmetics. Today, cosmetics represent the brand. It represents who you are as a company and as individual. Since customer experience is becoming a huge differentiator in the marketplace, cosmetics have become as important as functionality. It forces not just the QA folks, but also the dev and the ops folks to think right at the very beginning the social and psychological impacts of the customer experience that is being delivered, in addition to the functionalities that are being developed. Such a transformation is very important in how the quality assurance function participates in the continuous delivery process. When we said earlier the atomic commits are fully QA certified, and I want to make a clarification here. When we said it's fully certified, it is not just certifying the functional correctness of those atomic units, but also certifying any brand assurance attributes, such as those cosmetics that I'm referring about, which are very important in the new era. We got to think about it, and all of those assurance processes got to make sure that none of those brand elements are missed out in each one of those assurance, each one of those atomic units. Only then, when those atomic units are put in production readily, we don't lose out what we may already achieve. That's why the right measures are extremely important. Now, what I'm trying to say is the focus is not just forcing the dev, QA, and ops folks to work together, but most importantly, to drive synergies, learning, and continuous improvement. I think this is what George talked about, the achieving the systems thinking, the feedback loop, and the experimentation and the learning, the three important things that George mentioned as those objectives. Achieving those are more important than making these smaller adjustments, because these adjustments are towards those, and that's why this is very important that we need to start thinking about it and align it to our organizational styles. Next slide, please. So this is an important slide in my presentation. What I would like us to view here is this chart is not for an iteration. This chart is for an atomic unit. If QA teams continue to operate as an independent validation team, then they will lose their importance in the age of DevOps and continuous delivery. They got to transform into competency centers. Testers and the operating methodology should be able to shift left and work well with developers, and shift right to work with operations in every one of those atomic units. That gives the QA the binding force in the DevOps philosophy. That way, the specialization of the developers and the operations team are protected. This is also one of the easier ways to force the procedural change. Now, continuous delivery forces the individual groups to work together. That we know. And Dev, QA, and Ops, individual functions, they work on a highly collaborative environment. And now that also forces these individuals to gain certain additional skills. In a QA standpoint, if I talk about, the QA is right at the middle. They transform into Dev QA when they shift left, and Ops QA when they shift right. When they shift left, they got to gain some engineering skills to collaborate well with those developers. And when they shift right, they got to gain some domain and operating skills to work with those ops folks. I think those kind of adjustments we got to make at every level. Dev team has to make those adjustments. The ops guys have to make those adjustments. The folks outside of the Dev, QA, and ops, those guys, if they are part of the planning function, part of those post-operating or support on the field, everybody has to make those. Only then the feedback loop that George talked about is possible. Otherwise, we will miss out to pick out those learning that happens. And if we don't pick those learning, we will not be making proper adjustments in those atomic pieces of work. And if we don't apply those learning, then we will continue to make the same mistake, just that we may have changed the model and claim that we achieved continuous delivery, but we will continue to face the same number of issues, same number of production issues, same number of the time to resolve those production issues. All that will happen, and then there is no meaning of achieving the continuous delivery status. That's why define your objectives, then lay the path, then lay the process. Right? Next slide.
This is a great point, Ambu. And one of the things that I've seen, with some of the customers that we're working with, is you talked about the functional shift, right? About being able to actually deal more closer to the development teams and dealing with the operations teams in a QA function. To free up that time, I found that getting automation to actually generate for you all the tediousness away, right? The tediousness of writing automated test scripts and writing automated anything is inherently manual today. And having automation to actually generate the right test scripts to give you functional test coverage, so you can actually concentrate on that transition to digital quality assurance is key.
That's a great point, Jog. One of our customers started to measure the work planning in light of some of the lifecycle adjustments that they are making to achieve the continuous delivery. And when they started looking at the individuals and their productivity, they were able to find out whether the subject matter experts are truly released so that they focus on the right strategic activities, or are they bound with some mundane routine validation activities, the same wait time and work time that you talked about. So when you look at the individuals and their productivity, as they change the model, they were able to find out how well or how bad their transformation is happening. I think that's extremely important. That's a great point that you just made. Next slide, please. So, again, this is very much relevant to the point that George just mentioned. In traditional work planning, we always worried about the team mix and pyramid and all that. The same is applicable when it comes to continuous delivery as well. Either you look at the mix of the skills which each atomic unit is worked on, or the mix of individuals, depending on how many supermen that you may have on your team. More than likely, it will be the mix of people or the persona that I refer in this slide than having the superman. Don't forget the fact that the degree of automation will help you decide the number and the quality of individuals you need to have in those atomic units. In the spirit of achieving continuous delivery, those of you who believe in merging multiple skills into one or two individuals, and be aware of the people risk that you introduce. And those of you who think of merging organizations, be aware of lack of specialization that you would end up. So it needs very careful thinking depending on your industry, your organizational culture. It's not like hiring some individuals that can do anything and everything, or it's not like merging all the individual specialized groups that you have into one huge pool of resources. That's not going to solve the continuous delivery problem. As you adjust the number and type of individuals, you also need to address the tools landscape. That's extremely important. George talked about a few tools, but you need to figure out what exactly the changes that you are making in order to achieve your objectives. And for those changes, what are some of the tools that you already have or you need to acquire, and how you're going to put them in. All that is extremely important for you to prepare those parallel work streams to be deployed in production continuously or periodically on a push of a button. So you need to have the right timing, the right tools, the right set of adjustments. All that has to come together. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. So let me remind you that the reason why we are talking about QA in the context of continuous delivery is because it's right in the middle. It's right in the middle, gelling the dev and the ops teams together. Because of this sensitivity, I want us to spend a minute on some of the QA adjustments that you got to make, and I'll spend a couple of minutes, a couple of items here, and then I'll hand it over to Julie. The first thing is, it's not just a full automation or lifecycle automation. We got to be smart enough to make sure that that's in an optimum level, especially the QA or testing is at an optimum level, so that we need to be intelligent enough to make sure that the testing is at the right level and it's based on the nature of the atomic work. It's not just I have everything automated, but if they are, the second important thing is what you automate, is it integrated enough? Is it coming out cohesively as one unit? If they are standalone or if they operate in silos, then again you are not going to achieve the synergy that we talked about. You're not going to achieve that the push of the button deployment. You're not going to achieve that if everything is going to operate in silos. It's got to be integrated together. And the last point is, we got to start thinking about those cosmetics that I talked about. Those are the performance-related planning, the customer experience elements-related planning, and how that is addressed in each one of those adjustments that we are making, especially in the QA world, so that we make sure that we don't lose them. Those got to be thought about And finally, as you think about all that, think of defining the success criteria right at the beginning so that you can measure whether you are able to achieve it, and the adjustments that you are making, are they yielding those criteria properly within the time limit that you set yourself up. Those are the points that I want to mention here.
Fantastic, Ambu. There's a lot here, but we're also coming up on time limits. So I'm going to move over to Julie, hoping that we'll have enough time to maybe come back to some of this. Also, just a quick reminder, we've got a bunch of questions in our questions section. If you do have questions, type them in there. We will try to get to them. Those we don't get to, we'll forward on to our panel members and post their written responses on this webinar page at DevOps.com. But without further ado, let us move over now to Julie Craig from EMA, who's going to try to put a bow on this.
Thanks so much, Alan. Yeah, and like you say, we are coming up against the end of our event. I think we probably could have talked for maybe 2 hours about this. It's definitely an interesting topic.
Or 2 days.
Yeah. But hopefully, yeah, as Alan said, I thought I'd wrap up this event with an analyst view of the topics that we've discussed, and hopefully kind of package up everything in maybe a neat little package with, some pieces spilling out here and there because it's very hard to wrap it up that way. But anyway, I tend to approach both DevOps and continuous delivery from probably a pretty pragmatic point of view. Prior to becoming an analyst, I spent many years writing software for commercial software companies and working within their IT organizations. And one thing I've observed over time is that the seeds of the DevOps function have existed almost since the inception of distributed applications in the web. It was really born out of necessity as applications became more and more complex and had multiple pieces. What's different today is, first of all, that the function has a name. It's now called DevOps, these cross-functional collaborations between multiple staff members with multiple skills. And it's also matured. And one of the things that I'm finding is that when done well, both DevOps and continuous delivery can become very valuable to the business and even become revenue drivers. So my presentation will focus on these ideas, and also some of the ways in which high-quality DevOps interactions can facilitate continuous delivery. So on the next slide, please. We've talked about this a couple of times. Software is definitely the center of the universe in today's digital world. And one thing that interests me is that, 5 years ago as an analyst, we were talking about IT as a cost center and the need of IT to become more business aligned and more business relevant. And that really was one of the top issues that a lot of the folks I surveyed were dealing with, within every role of the organization. In today's digital world, the tables have kind of subtly shifted in that IT, instead of becoming a cost center as part of developing software, can actually start to contribute to revenue generation. Software is really the embodiment today of the joint ideas of IT and the business. Business charts the course of the company, and development teams and operations team make business goals a reality via creating and delivering software. In essence, software is the motive power that's taking businesses into the future, that's enabling them to apply new technologies such as cloud and Internet of Things and sensors and those sorts of things to their own competitive challenges. So on the next slide, this slide and the following slide, I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of my view on kind of DevOps and how it fits within the normal application lifecycle. Often the topics of DevOps and continuous delivery are discussed in context to one another, and particularly in enterprise IT, there definitely can be a link. The reality is that accelerating software delivery requires acceleration of every stage of the life cycle. Each slow stage slows down the entire process. It's kind of like links in a chain. If one breaks, the chain is really has much less value. I also see DevOps as encompassing multiple iterative life cycles in the real world, with each cycle requiring input from DevOps and line of business to a greater or lesser extent, in a way this kind of parallels the agile development techniques, where line of business is a very active player as well. So when you think of software as a set of artifacts that are passing through these iterative stages and across the cross-stage transfers, between stages, for example, test to prod, the need for automation becomes increasingly more apparent. If you can find a way to make these cross-functional interactions work, DevOps can be quite a significant business enabler, particularly if you define business success by revenue growth. And a lot of this depends on how well these interactions happen across the life cycle. One thing I've found in my research is companies whose IT practitioners rate the interactions between dev and ops as being above average or excellent are more than twice as likely to see double-digit annual revenue growth than those rating the interactions as average or below. So to the degree that you can put into practice some of the functions that Anbu talked about, you really can come up with some significant advantages for your company as well in being able to release software faster. So next slide. As companies evolve towards continuous delivery, deployment becomes more frequent, both as part of the iterative stages and from one stage to another. So from this perspective, of course, deployment automation becomes increasingly important. I really see DevOps, and this is for enterprise IT in particular, as opposed to maybe a software company. DevOps is a backbone, basically, for continuous delivery. So in a way, the two go hand in hand, and the quality of DevOps can significantly contribute to the quality of continuous delivery, because basically you've ironed out some of the cultural factors that Anbu talked about. Now, the other factor here is that particularly as you move into continuous delivery, high-quality coding and lifecycle acceleration alone aren't enough. It's equally important that software is delivered as written and as tested with 100% accuracy. And as anyone who has done complex installs and upgrades manually knows, it's difficult to complete an upgrade process 100% correctly even once, much less multiple times as you start to iterate. So in my mind, this is one of the roles of products such as CA release automation, which George also talked about. So on the next slide, since we're running short on time, I think we've talked a lot about what continuous delivery actually is. But from my perspective as an analyst, I'm seeing companies who are delivering software to production many times a day. That isn't right for every company, as we've talked about before. I think the point of continuous delivery, though, is the ability to enable IT-enabling business to have a great deal of flexibility in rolling out digitally supported products and services, regardless of what the rate is that's right for your particular company. It's also important to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, that software is delivered correctly. Because one of the things we often see is that once it goes into production, you deliver 98% of the software package, but that other 2%, maybe you forgot to load a table, or your virtual server is somewhat different. These are the kinds of issues that automation can take care of, because it makes sure that when you do, as you do continuously deliver, everything comes out in the end as you expect it to be. On the next slide.
Julie,
oh, sorry.
So no worries. So one of the statements that lurks in my head is somebody once told me the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment is fairly straightforward. Continuous deployment is really when you're pushing information at all times, regardless of the quality. But when you're thinking about continuous delivery, is the ability to be able to go live with any change at any point in time. So it becomes a business decision, which kind of reinforces what you're stating. Not all companies are able to, push out 100 changes, 2,000 changes a day to production, but you should be able to.
Well, yeah, and you're definitely right. There's a difference between deployment and delivery, right? To me, delivery implies a higher level of quality. So you can, throw the software out there, or you can throw software out there that has actually been tested and that you are assured is actually configured the same way in prod as it was in test. So on the next slide, trying to keep us on track here so we don't go over a whole lot. Continuous delivery is often assumed to be a natural outcome of agile development, but it definitely is being business-driven as well, I guess, as is agile development. This question was asked of IT practitioners in companies already engaged in continuous delivery. So supposedly they've already accelerated their software delivery somewhat, but regardless of the fact that they had already done so, they were still being pushed to accelerate even more. The reason why I included this is because it illustrates the speed with which modern businesses are being forced to operate. I mean, they aren't just demanding fast software delivery as a whim. This is a real business issue, and it also illustrates the importance of software in facilitating business change, because in many cases the business just can't change without new software. On the next slide, this again reiterates the fact that the business is a top driver for continuous delivery and for improvement over time. I'm going to skip over this a little bit because we don't have much time left. In my last slide, I want to make sure that I have a chance to cover. So if we could go to the next slide. This slide is from my latest research on DevOps and continuous delivery, which was also the source for the comments I made earlier about DevOps and revenue growth. There's also a relationship between revenue growth and continuous delivery frequency. So this isn't saying that you're delivering code 20 times a day. This is how often you have increased delivery compared to yourself, so say year over year. On this slide, the blue bars show revenue increases of more than 10% year over year. The green bars show a combined view of companies with lesser growth, those whose growth was flat, in the single digits, or decreasing. The y-axis on the left side groups companies by the increases in their frequency of code delivery. So comparing the two blue bars, we see that companies which increased delivery frequency by 10% or more in the prior year were more than 35% more likely to see double-digit revenue growth than those whose delivery frequency grew by less than 10%. The green bars are actually equally noteworthy. 75% of companies who accelerated their frequency by 10% or less, by less than 10%, saw relatively flat or decreased revenue. So while accelerating code delivery doesn't guarantee high growth revenue, you do see outliers in this chart. It's apparent that DevOps and continuous delivery, when well executed, can certainly deliver value. So that's the end of my presentation, and certainly was a pleasure having our discussion today. But Alan, I think it's time to turn it over to you.
Yes, it is, Julie. Thank you. That last slide, I think, was the money slide there that really kind of shows it. But we only have but a minute. We're obviously going to go over a couple minutes here. We'll try to get to a few questions, and as I said, we'll get the other ones that have written answers to. But let me jump right in. There's two questions here from Sujay. One is, how do you measure the success of DevOps other than faster and quality releases? Are there any metrics that can be collected periodically And it's because in legacy organization, it takes a lot of time and energy to get to continuous delivery. So measurement through metrics is critical. Any one of you three have a quick answer on that?
Yeah,
Some other metrics?
This is Anbu. I would probably there are many, but if I need to pick up two, one is the defect and leakage. How many defects that got in before and after the DevOps implementation. If the trend is positive, then that means you are successfully implementing it. So defect leakage is one, and the second one is in a customer experience standpoint, the mean time to resolve an issue. MTTR is, in short, we call it mean time to resolve. Any issue that is reported by customers post-implementation, how quickly we are solving it, that measure. So those are the two I would recommend.
Excellent. Next question from Justin Thompson. Is there a need to better define what is meant by continuous delivery? I'm concerned with people stating that CD means code gets in untested, which is an anti-definition from his understanding, and fully tested code, I just lost his question. Fully tested code is something else. Around the definition of continuous delivery, any?
So this is Julie Allen, and I encounter that question all the time with my research, and it's not just continuous delivery. I mean, virtually every term we use in IT, when you think even service virtualization, release automation, I mean, basically it's different depending on vendor, it's different depending on a company's specific needs. I think you can give a broad definition, but within that, each company is going to have to kind of tweak the definition to suit what their specific requirements are.
Yep. One more question, and then I think we're going to have to take the rest in writing. One of the struggles is the impact of continuous delivery on our environment strategy and the mechanics used to maintain them. For example, applications dependent on other applications. Components will require those other applications components or components in the environment infrastructure in which testing is occurring. How do you see company environment strategies changing to support continuous delivery? And when does it become necessary to change an application's architecture to remove these dependencies?
Georg, there's tons. There are a ton of answers there and a ton of questions in there as well. But if you think about what the airline industry did, right, when they don't throw when they have a new wing design, they don't throw entire plane up into the air with different luggage and with different wind conditions to test the new or assure that a new wing design is going to be performant. So I think as IT matures in continuous delivery, there are certainly approaches that can learn from that. I mentioned one of them is that concept of virtualizing the services in a smart way, aside from mocking and stubbing that we've done over years, but in a smart way so we can go and actually reduce that complexity very early in the life cycle to achieve that shift left in producing high quality code.
Yeah, and just one more thing. I spend a lot of time on the production management side of things, so I totally get this question. I've been struggling with this for years. The thing is, you're not going to get rid of those dependencies, which is one reason why I'm an automation bigot. I mean, as these environments become increasingly complex, I mean, it's like playing a million IT people playing whack-a-mole. If you don't want to do that, you need to automate the process, invest in some high-quality APM tools. In other words, what I'm saying is you're not going to change the environment to suit continuous delivery. You're going to have to tweak continuous delivery to deal with the realities of what's actually out there.
Muhammad comes to the mountain or the mountain comes to Muhammad. You're correct. Guys, we're almost 5 minutes after. We have some other great questions on here. I'm going to ask Jules to grab these questions. Julie, Georg, Ambu, we will get you the written questions. If you could give us some written responses, we will post them when we post the slides and the replay of this webinar on our DevOps.com page. But we're out of time. Julie, Georg, Ambu, thanks for a great webinar on continuous delivery. For those folks who have hung out here to the bitter end, I apologize for running over, but we do try to get to these questions. I know They're important to people. We'll be doing more webinars here at DevOps.com, potentially with CA and Julie and Jorg Ambu. We'd love to have you back, and stay tuned for then. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel, Editor-in-Chief, DevOps.com, thanking Julie, Craig, Jorg von Sperling, and Ambu Mupadathi, if I didn't mess that up. Thank you for a great webinar today, and see you all next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.